Tam, welcome to the Group X podcast. Thank you so much for coming in to have a chat with me.
I'm excited to play, see where we end up.
Love this. Now, for my audience that probably have no idea who you are, because just recently until I reached out to get to know you, who are you, and can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into doing what you're doing in the fitness industry?
Yeah, I would love to. So I started my Pilates journey 27 years ago, which I know is surprising because I only look 27. But no, I was 13 years old, so you can do the math on that. And I was a young little dancer, and I started having a bit of low back pain. So having the dance mum that I had, we'd heard about Pilates, and we sort of hunted down our local studio. And we found out I had a double scoliosis, so I started doing Pilates to sort of help correct those muscular imbalances, and basically never grew out of it.
Wow. Okay, so from the age of 13, at the age of 13, I don't think I even knew what fitness was. I'm going to say maybe I was playing tennis, but I love the fact that that is where it all began from for you from such a very young age. Now, do you say scoliosis?
Yeah, so like a lateral curvature of the spine, we found out that I've not just got one, I've got two, which is nice because it sort of balances me back out. It's quite a common thing. Lots of people have it and they don't actually know they have a scolly. But yeah, Pilates really helped me sort of with that pain that I was experiencing as I was growing, but as well, with the strength and the coordination and the balance and all of those things that I needed for my dancing as well.
Okay, so let me ask this silly question. Are you still doing dance today, or is dance something that you have retired from or gone, no, I want to focus on something else
I would
now?
like to say I'm still dancing, but I'm not really. I play
Yep.
roller derby now instead. I'm a bit of a skater, which is
Roller
quite
derby.
different. Yes.
That is so cool. I have
Yeah.
never had a guest on here that has told me about roller derby before. Let's park that, but I want to come back to that if we can as well to understand a
Yeah.
little bit more about.
But
Is
I
that done
did
here in
dance.
Illawarra?
Yes, yeah, and I'm fresh to it. I'm only 12 months in, so we're still building skills and all of those sorts of things. But yeah, I did go on to dance professionally. So I literally started as a young little dancer doing Pilates and went on to dance professionally with everyone from Kanye West to the Wiggles.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. I really do enjoy hearing that kind of stuff. So talk to me then about Pilates and when you first got into it, what was, apart from the benefits, I suppose, of helping you through what you were going through at such a young age, what was it that really attracted you to wanting to do Pilates?
I think as soon as I knew that it was going to help take the pain away, that was a big selling point for me. Um, It was community as well. I guess lots of people find exercise based on finding a tribe, whether it's, tennis or running or dancing. So I loved the people, and I was actually at that first studio for well over 10 years. So they did become my second family. But movement is in me. I think if people are movement people, whether it's sport or dancing, you love how that makes you feel. Yeah, and it still does. I think that's why I've never grown out of it. Um, it was also, through my dance career, I never got injured through dancing, but I did decide in between contracts to go skiing one weekend and ended up needing both my knees reconstructing as a result of that lovely little weekend away, which I don't recommend as a holiday activity, but it was great to sort of see the rehab side of Pilates as well, literally when I
Yep.
did not have a good leg to stand on.
Uh, boom, boom. Sorry, it was that. I'll be honest and say I absolutely hate the snow. I absolutely despise the snow. When I used to work for Les Mills in Canberra, every year as an annual thing, we would go down to the snow for our
Mhm.
yearly conference thing. Um, Here's the honesty in me coming out. I used to just catch the tube from one pub to the other, have a beer here, go to the top, have a beer, come back down, have a beer. That was my way to keep warm because
What's your
I
sport?
tried standing up, I tried boarding. Yeah, that was my sport then.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
cool.
I just had no chance of doing it. And I honestly, I think if I was able to stand up and go somewhere, I probably would have hurt myself and been in a similar situation as
Well, the
well.
problem is
So,
that I actually kind of knew what I was doing. We used to ski every year, so um, which doesn't say much maybe about my ski abilities. I think it's more a reflection on the terrible Australian snow.
yep, yep,
But
let's
yeah,
go with that.
and dances and sports, like dances and ball sports, don't usually mix. So skiing was literally the only actual sport I ever used to do. Um,
Yep.
but that bilateral knee reconstruction was 21 years ago, and I haven't been skiing since.
No. Don't blame you. Don't blame you at all. Can you then talk me through that for a rehab process that you had to go through as well? How did Pilates help you with getting back on track and helping you, get back to life again?
Yeah, I worked pretty hard because your career as a dancer is so short, and this happened sort of at the start of my pro dance career. I didn't have time. No surgeons I went to see wanted to do rehab on one for 6 months and then, operate on the other knee and do another 6 months rehab. I didn't have 12 months to take out. So I was literally doing Pilates, swimming, physio, on the exercise bike 3, 4 times a day, different kinds of strength work. Yeah, to sort of make that rehab as short as I could. But Pilates definitely helped me get back on my feet. I was back to rehearsing again in less than 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So now I'm going to ask the silliest question that I've asked you today. Well, I hope it's going to be the silliest question. What is Pilates? What is the easiest way to describe Pilates for those people that are watching the show? Are probably going to be looking at the screen, going, "Tony, dude, why didn't you do some homework before you had this interview?"
They
But
could be
I
saying,
wanted to
thank
keep.
God he asked that question, Tony.
Yeah, look, there's always that side of the coin as well. I appreciate that. But what is Pilates? And I suppose let me be honest. The first time that I ever saw Pilates was in a Pilates reformer bed that was in Fitness First Bondi Junction in Spring Street. But there was one person in there, and then I went back in 3 weeks later, and the room had been removed. So we're talking 23, 24 years ago here. What is Pilates? So for the average Joe that can get a bit of an understanding, what is Pilates?
I might actually start with what is not Pilates because it's not yoga and it's not stretching, or it's not just stretching. I
Yep.
think we often get people come to us and go, oh, Pilates, that's the same as yoga. We often get put in that same little cubby hole or pigeonhole. They very much complement each other. We're looking at range of motion, we're looking at strength, everything that Joe Pilates created all came from, inner unit and core and, working from the inside out. So it's this sort of beautiful balance of mind body connection. And that's something that's really important to me. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. And finding strength and control, through a range of motion, whether it's on the mat or whether it's on the reformer or the other Pilates apparatus.
Okay, so just on that then, mat and reformer, are
Mhm.
the exercises the same? Now that is the stupid question right there. I know the exercises will be different, but are the movement patterns the same? What you're doing on the floor, it's just a little bit harder on the actual reformer. Would that be correct in my silly assumption?
Yeah, that's not a silly question at all. Absolutely. So Pilates mat work forms the basis of what we do. There's definitely common threads of the exercises, the movements, whether we do them on the mat or on the reformer or on the Cadillac, or, there is sort of those connecting of the dots. I think the mat work is where the real work happens. There is no equipment to hide behind. It is just you and your body. So it forms a really strong foundation. I love when people do mat work and do it well.
Okay, so if I cast my head back to 2003 at Fitness First in North Sydney, we had our mind body studio, and it was only Pilates and yoga that was being taught in that space. We didn't have any reformer beds, and it was just the mat work. So we could say that the mat work is harder than on the reformer beds.
I think it depends how it's taught. So I could go to a mat class and maybe the instructor is just focusing on, breath and release work. That is their take on Pilates mat work. Or I
Okay.
could go, I remember one of my hardest Pilates sessions I ever did was a mat work class. I don't think I've ever sweat or been so shaky in my life. So I think, yeah, it depends on the instructor, I guess, like anything.
Yeah. Okay, so let's in a normal gym environment that don't have, I'm going to say it's probably $100,000 worth of equipment to go and buy beds and that kind of stuff and fit out a room. If they've just got a normal studio which they're going to be able to do Pilates in, what style of Pilates, and I suppose is there different styles of Pilates that can be offered in a normal group exercise space for a big box gym?
Yeah, that's where it's interesting because, when we think about Pilates, 23 years ago when you saw it and 27 years ago when I first came across it, it wasn't really in gyms. It was private boutique studios where probably no one had really heard of it. And that's very different to where it is now, with gyms offering mat and reformer. Um, I think it's almost like we've taken this little split in the road, and there are the hardcore old school boutique Pilates studios, and then there's sort of this beautiful
Yep.
experience of Pilates in the fitness world, which can be quite different.
This is the Group X podcast. Different styles of Pilates. Are there different styles of Pilates, or is it just the one style? You know, I refer to when I'm referring to that is like yoga, how there's different flow or yoga and all that kind of stuff. Is there different varieties of Pilates?
In my mind, absolutely. And I think today, 2024, more so than ever, we're seeing lots of different takes, in the Pilates, what we call the Pilates world, and in the fitness world as well. If I think back to when I started Pilates, it was all private lessons, semi-private lessons, personalized programs, very, very small groups that were doing their own individualized sessions. Now, obviously, it's really popular in gyms. You've got mat work and reformer coming into the fitness space. Even just standalone group reformer only studios is making up such a big part of the Pilates world at the moment.
So in the beginning of what you just said, then you said there's two different styles. There's like the one for the gym, and then there's studio Pilates. Can you explain the difference between those two to give this one here a little bit of an understanding on what you mean with the differences there?
Yeah, firstly, the equipment used, in a full Pilates studio, like your boutique setting, you're going to have the reformer, which I think most people have either heard of it, even if they don't know what it looks like. So you've got your reformer, you've got a wonder chair, which is another piece of apparatus, and another one that we call either the trapeze table or the Cadillac, same thing, a humongous piece of Pilates equipment. And then you've got your other small little bits and pieces in your small apparatus. So that sort of boutique fitness Pilates studio, what you might find in that private or semi-private setting. And then in the fitness world, you're going to find more of your straight mat work and just group reformer, where, they might have anything up to sort of 30 plus reformers in a room.
Yep. Right. But we're starting to see in the fitness industry now, and I think some of the big boxes that are out there are starting to put reformer studios in their space. So is that where we're starting to see that crossover of what we were seeing with just Matt before to those that are opening up the studios?
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to return on investment, there is no other piece of gym equipment that brings in the dollars like the reformers do as well.
Yeah.
And we're, at Pilates Education, trying to sort of bridge that gap. We want Pilates in a gym space or in a fitness setting to still be related to what Pilates was. It's not boot camp on a reformer. It's not swinging upside down and coming up with crazy, silly things to do on a reformer. Are we teaching Pilates or are we just doing something on a reformer?
Yep. Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that as well, because I will assume when I say this that even like we've seen in other programs that are out there in the industry where instructors come along and start to butcher things, and then we start seeing a decline in what's going on. I think what you touched on then is vital for longevity of the programs in big box space as well, making sure that instructors that are teaching, and so for clubs that are out there watching, make sure your instructors are trained and qualified in Pilates Reformer if you have them in a Pilates Reformer studio teaching, because if it's not what it is, don't advertise
it's not it.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that one is, better or worse than the other. I often say they're just different. I think there is place in the world for high intensity Pilates or, fitness Pilates. But I think if you had a bulging disc and your doctor says, or your therapist says, okay, Tony, you need to go and do some Pilates, and you as general population or general public don't know the difference within the Pilates space, then you might go, oh yeah, my mate's gym offers Pilates, I'll jump in there. With 30 people in a group reformer class, that might not be the best option maybe for your injury or pathology. So just one is not worse than the other, they're just different. And I think making sure the right people find the right place for them is important.
Yeah, I'll add with that. I think if any of you that are watching have an injury, I wouldn't be going to a big box gym for your Pilates. I would be looking to go to a smaller studio or a rehab style place. If you have injuries, go there first, get the strength, like what you did from a young age as well, get it all sorted to build on that. And then you can look to head over to the other space, the big boxes
Yeah,
later on
absolutely.
as well.
Yeah. And I think it is just education, like anything. You don't know what you don't know. So when someone says
Yeah.
Pilates and you see a Pilates sign, yeah, do your research and sort of, I guess your body knows, doesn't it? You go into one space and try something, you soon know if it was a good decision or not.
Yeah. So true. Now, in a Pilates class, this is what we do in a Pilates class, or can it be varied? Like, say for instance, you and I are both working at the same studio, and people come to my class and they come to your class. Are they going to get the same workout, or is it up to me how I design that class with all the skills I've got compared to what you would offer?
It depends what space you end up in. I think some, perhaps franchises are a little bit more strict on, this is the repertoire we teach. Doesn't matter what instructor you see, but there's going to be, things that pop up quite regularly and consistently, which is great, which I guess the clients then always know what they're going to expect, as opposed to maybe a different studio down the road that has instructors trained from lots of different Pilates training schools that might bring very different energy, repertoire, intensity to their training. So I guess it's like, you like different red wine to the red wine I like, and we kind of try a few different things, and yeah, you find your tribe, I guess.
Yeah. Cool. So I think with my question there was more what I was trying to get across is it's not like a body pump class. Track 1 is this, track 2 is this, track 3 is this, and no matter where you go, that's what you're going to get. So it's quite different to that style of programming and that style of class. When you're going to get the workout range, but it might be what you start with or what you end with could be different from class to class.
Absolutely.
In that regard, so there's no flow as such.
Yeah, very different depending what training school the instructor's been to, depending what the level or intensity of the class is. They might have a very different pool of repertoire that they're pulling from. So maybe a lot less consistency than if you're going to Les Mills or spin. Yeah.
Yep. So on that, Pilates Ed, your business. Tell me a bit about that, what you offer and how that came about to be as well.
I have owned a lot of Pilates studios over the years in Sydney and the UK. And then when we moved back to Australia, I had a studio down here in Wollongong. I've recently sold that because the education took off. I deliver balanced body education. So Balanced Body are an American company. They both build Pilates equipment and deliver their education programs in over 60 countries worldwide. So when they approached me in 2018 to sort of come on board and bring their education to Australia, there was lots of things that I really loved about the programs that they offer. So that's sort of, while I still had my studios, I was delivering their teacher training programs, but then this has become such a big part of my time that something had to give, and unfortunately it was the studios.
Yeah. Now, are you still teaching yourself at the moment or not?
I don't have
you
time.
Can't fit it in?
Yeah.
No.
So the education, I keep thinking that the education will sort of start to settle down a little bit, but it's doing the opposite, Tony. There is Reformer Studios opening on every other corner. So it's keeping me very busy, and I get to travel.
Yeah.
But yeah, we kind of have a divide in the education that we're providing. There is the fitness world, like we're doing a fitness professional version of Reformer training, which is great if people are already Les Mills qualified or PTs or dance teachers. They can sort of go down that road. But then we also have the full program where someone who maybe does Pilates and has done for a little while and they love it and maybe looking for a career change, then they sort of start at foundational levels and we take them all the way through their Pilates training.
This is the Group X podcast.
On education, is there a certain amount of hours that you have to be doing? Like as an example, like yoga, I know there's 12,000 hours or whatever it is, whatever silly number of hours you've got to do with that. Is there something similar to that with Pilates to be qualified and get your education?
Like any teacher training, when we're looking at quality, I think quality takes time. So with Balanced Body Education, you're looking at quite a few hundred hours to be fully comprehensively qualified. They're module-based courses, so you can spread them out and do them, as slow or as fast as you like. It really depends how much time the students have to dedicate to their training. But at the
Yep.
end of the day, we're dealing with people's bodies and quite often injury. So understanding how the body works, how it's put together, how to train it, that takes time.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you on that, and I think that the fact that their training is spread over a longer period of time gives an instructor enough time to make sure it lands and is not just something like, nothing against these courses that are just over a weekend and just smash out 1 and 2 days and yet we're done, yep, get in there and go and teach. But I think the longer the education is, the more it sits, the more the foundations get solid, and it actually helps improve what you're delivering as an instructor. Yeah. As I said, please, guys that are watching, please don't get me wrong. Yeah, weekend courses are still fantastic if that's what you've got to go and do. But as like anything, I think the continuing or the ongoing education is vital. And as you said, Tam, with Pilates, when you're dealing with someone's body that may have imbalances or whatever it may be, it's not just a fitness style class. This is something where you're working on rectifying things and working on things that need to be fixed.
And even
so
up
let's
to
make sure
500 hours of training, I remember like students come out going, I still don't feel like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So it just, it takes time, and the more bodies you see, and then you kind of have that thing as well of teaching repertoire to different body types and going, well, why does that one look different? Or why can't he do what she can do, or vice versa? So it's really like a learning on the job. We learn the concepts and the movements and the repertoire in training, but until you get out there and start putting that repertoire on real bodies, that's where the real learning sort of starts.
So let's just, I want to delve into that a little bit more if we can. Let's just say we've got a room that's got 10 reformer beds in it, and I'm up there and I'm teaching, and I want you guys all to do this move. Are you as an instructor going from bed to bed to help correct participants to make sure that they're doing it correctly, or giving them options to say, cool, okay, I realize that you can't do what I've just asked you to do this instead? Is that part of what they run through with instructor training and coaching?
Yeah, so
well?
Having those sort of progressions and regressions and variations to suit different people. That's what I believe it should be about, even, within a group class, that we can still go, okay, Tony's new, this is his third class, maybe I'm going to tweak it a little bit for him, still make him feel included. But I've also got Joe in the other corner who's been training with me for 10 years. How do I make sure both are satisfied and, get what they need? I think there's also a fine line with that, though. You also don't want to throw in a pregnancy plus a disc bulge plus some osteoporosis within that same session. At the end of the day, if I'm paying an instructor to teach a group reformer class, then those clients should be able to complete a group reformer class.
Yep. Is that something then where clubs would offer beginner classes, intermediate classes, advanced classes, potentially pregnancy classes on a timetable to cater for everybody, instead of just having the, hey, yep, it's on at 5:30 this afternoon, come on in and good luck, go for it?
In an ideal world, Tony, I guess all my advanced clients are available on a Tuesday night to come to my 7 p.m. class.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that's not how the world works. Who I consider an advanced client might be very different to what the client thinks their ability is like as well. So in most, and I'm talking group reformer or mat work spaces here, not a semi-private, the instructor has to be able to give a regression or a progression dependent on the bodies in front of them. And I think that's what makes a great instructor, to be able to identify, hey, Sally in the corner is struggling a little bit. I'm just going to go and have a little chitty chat. I'm going to change or tweak it for her. And at the same time, when I've got Bob, who's been coming for 20 years to train with me, I can make sure he walks out, really satisfied as well.
Yeah.
I do also think there's a fine line, on top of different levels of abilities within a class. What happens when, a prenatal client walks in, or someone with osteoporosis or a disc bulge? And some studios sort of say, everyone is welcome. That's great because we don't want to discriminate. But at the same time, that's a lot to ask of an instructor.
Yeah.
If I'm teaching a group fitness class, whether it's, pump or reformer, I'm being paid to run a single class, not 10 individualized classes. So it's a really hard one to answer.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, because if we look at a big box environment, anybody's a member. Anybody can come. Doesn't matter their fitness level, doesn't matter their ability to do everything. And as you said, yes, as an instructor, I need to be able to walk in, teach and cater to everybody. You don't want to be giving specialized attention. And I use the example of the 10 beds that we had before.
Yeah.
You end up teaching 10 different classes, which makes it really, really awkward and time consuming. And as you said, you've got to give attention to that newbie that has never done this before. But Bob, who's, as you said, been doing it for 20 years, Bob's expecting to be walking out of there going, I've just smashed myself. This is intense.
Yeah.
My suggestion would be, and I could be completely wrong, maybe happening out there at the moment, clubs need to potentially look at putting different styles of classes on to cater for those. And I know, as you said earlier, 7 o'clock at night, all my advanced people might not be able to come.
Yeah.
But I think clubs need to look to be able to do it in order to cater for everyone properly. To make sure they're doing it. And I would also say to those that are members of a gym, if the experience you're getting isn't what you're expecting, look to then go to maybe a boutique place that can help, or to somewhere where it is a smaller studio where you are going to get that one-on-one attention that you're looking for as well. That's going to tick your boxes to go, yeah, cool, this is exactly what I'm after.
Yeah, and I think that's where, even just within group reformer studios, how one company or business teaches their clients with maybe lots of hands-on tactile cues and corrections might be very different to the reformer studio across the road that believes that, we just give generalized cues. I'm not going to touch you. I'm just going to let your body do what it needs to do. Again, both have a place, both are great. But yeah, finding something that works for your body, I think is super important. And and just understanding that if it's a group class, I should be teaching a group class.
Yeah. On that,
can I add one more thing?
No, please go for it.
Another thought on that is that my classes don't have to necessarily be beginner, intermediate and advanced. So when we used to have our studios, we used to sort of not make it about the level of the class, but perhaps the pace and the complexity. So we used to have slower paced classes that were not easy. So we were finding a suitable challenge with simpler movements. And then as the sort of class title changed, so did the intensity, so did the complexity. I guess there's a few different ways they could do that.
Is there, and my brain just went straight back to old school aerobics here, and that, like the high-low or the high-lie, whatever.
I'm just picturing you in a leotard teaching step at the front of a group class.
That's when I had long locks and I had a ponytail and flipped my hair back.
Sorry.
But is there? No, I love that because that's honest and raw. It's exactly what this podcast is all about. My brain went back though to it was the first ever class that I did where it was a freestyle aerobic class, and we added on so that you did your basic move, which was a step forward, step back, and then we did a grapevine or whatever it may be. Is that type of thing involved in when teaching? So you start at a base level here, and then we can add something on, and then we can add something on, so that it goes through and gets more complex. I suppose the intensity increases for me, who's never done it before. Cool, I can give this a go. But for Bob, as we were talking about before, Bob could almost go straight to that further movement or further processing the exercise. Is that type of thing available with Pilates Reformer?
Yes, definitely. And with any of the Pilates repertoire, and it sort of links into the education we do. So we start with what we call movement principles. So learning or teaching our students to be able to teach and identify movements in their simplest form. So if I need to teach you hip extension, what does that look like? If I want to teach you spinal rotation, how do I do it, at the very bottom layer? And then from there, as the repertoire gets more complicated, you as the instructor go, okay, so I can add that piece, or I can make it unilateral, or I can, make it a more complex movement pattern. I call it building intelligent instructors. So I can give them any repertoire, from Instagram or from their book, and go, okay, what are the pieces of that puzzle that you need to be able to give your clients in order to make them succeed when the movements become more challenging?
Okay. On that, I'm going to ask you the question about education. And say, for instance, Tony decides, here I am talking in third person, I'm going to love it when I do that. I've decided that I'm going to go and do Pilates Ed training course that's on in a couple of weeks' time. What am I going to experience over that training course of that weekend or however long the training goes for? What will I experience when I rock up, and can you run us through that sort of process?
Are you going to wear your leg warmers from teaching your aerobics days? Because that could totally change your experience.
You know I will.
But in all seriousness, leg warmers hours or not. It will start with movement principles. So 2 days of face-to-face education where we learn what we call our pre-Pilates repertoire. So all those movements in their very simplest form. Presuming that you have no skills, we start to build our tactile skills. We start to learn to read the body in front of us and develop what I call our Pilates eye. So, where is the alignment, and does it make a difference if I tweak something this way or that way? So that's your first 2 days or module 1. And then it just depends what course you're doing. If you're going down the mat work path, then you've got 3 mat work modules. If you've got reformer, you've got 3 reformer modules. And if you're doing full studio comprehensive, it's a total of 10 modules that we split.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Okay, so just the basic course, is that going to give me enough to be able to walk into a studio and start teaching? Or is that just my understanding to sort of go, hey, yep, cool, I've got an understanding on this and I still need somebody else in the room with me while I get started?
Every student's experience is different, as well as the face-to-face education. They have to do their practice hours. It's very well for me to stand in front of them for 2 days and go, okay, do this, do that, can you see this or the other? If you don't then go into a studio and start practicing those skills and seeing the things for yourself, I don't know if you're going to be capable or when you're capable. So, yeah, the practice is the most important thing. Feeling it like in your body, so doing your self-mastery hours, because I think once you know what an exercise feels like, it's easy. You don't have to think about what to say because you go, I know exactly what I'm doing here.
Yeah. Yeah. So can I teach after that weekend course where you've just gone through the foundations, I think you called it, am I able to teach? So say for instance, that's Saturday, Sunday. Am I able to walk into a studio Monday if I'm confident enough and go, yeah, cool, I can put this together and teach a class? Or do I need to wait, have my hours done before I get my certificate to say, yep, Tone, you are qualified. You're out there, go for it.
Yeah, we're a bit different in that sense. So you do get a certificate of attendance from each module because you do lots of practical teaching and a written module test every time that we see you. After movement principles, to be honest, there's probably not a lot of stuff to be able to teach as far as running a class. It's more the tools we use for assessments or initial consultations. But once you've done, Mat 1 or Reformer 1, if you're at a place where you've done your practice and you know how to conduct a class and what you're looking for, you've got a certificate that will cover you for your insurance for that level.
Okay.
And then once you've done all your modules, you'll come back to me, in 6 or 12 months' time, you've been teaching, and I get to assess you then as an instructor, and then that's when you get your final balanced body certification.
Okay. So it could take me a fair bit of time depending on my availability to be able to run through all of the modules and everything. If I was crazy enough, I could probably smash it out over 10 weeks or whatever it may be and go, yeah, Tone, you're going to be exhausted, but you know what? Yeah, you can go and do it. It's really up to the individual what time frame they decide to run through all the module.
Yeah, there's lots of flexibility because it's module based. The quickest we suggest doing the modules is probably 4 or 5 months if you're doing just mat or just reformer. But yeah, some people do decide to stretch it out if they haven't, if they're a little time poor.
Yeah. Now, one of my favorite questions I'm going to ask you, do you have a favorite module out of all of the ones that you've got on offer that you enjoy delivering over others? Or is that sort of like, when you've got 3 kids and you've got I don't have a favorite.
Depends who's listening to me at the time. If you ask my students that question, they'll say, oh, but she said this was her favorite module, because I think I start every module saying, this is my favorite module. To be honest, these days, I think I enjoy teaching the Wonder Chair and the trapeze table the most, just because I don't get to teach them as much. There is so much demand at the moment for reformer training that I feel like I'm doing a lot of reformer, which I obviously love, but when I get to play and sort of swing upside down on the caddy, the trapeze table, I do love that repertoire and the complexity of it as well.
Is that the one that's got the 4 posts? And
it looks
the
like
whole,
a 4-poster bed, and you can do lots of sort of cool versions and whole body challenges.
Yeah, I have seen that, and I think that was on the website the other day when I was designing the directory page for you as well. I was looking at that, and I was like, "Wow, okay, I've never seen that before. I'd only seen the small sort of what looks like a normal bed with the bars at the end. I hadn't actually seen the one with everything on it. So that's cool.
Like, that's walk into the studio and see that Cadillac for the first time and kind of go like, "What do you do on that?" And intriguing.
Is that what we would normally see in not physios, but in the smaller studio where it's more going in for rehab and that kind of stuff, where you have one-on-one time with a professional to run through, hey, Tony, you know what, this on your back is screwed. I'm going to get you to do this. Is that what we'd see more in that environment rather than just the normal?
You tend to see that Cadillac, well, the Cadillac and the trapeze table, that's the same thing. Yes, you will see that in that sort of rehabilitation environment. There's also a cool adaptation called a tower. So it's sort of half of a caddy that can be attached to a reformer. So there's some studios that actually have group reformer with tower, so that it opens up like a whole bunch of other repertoire and a little bit more of a niche market, which is pretty cool as well.
Awesome. Tam, thank you for coming on and chatting to me. You've given me an understanding of something that I had only, seriously touched the tip of the iceberg on it, and my limited knowledge. And you touched on it earlier on, which was, I didn't want to say it, but, I thought Pilates was a style of yoga. Let's be realistic, for people that are watching out there. Yeah, the blonde guy, well, when there's hair there, it's blonde anyway. That was my understanding of what Pilates was in the beginning. So I appreciate you being able to go into some detail with that as well, and also what you offer with the courses. Is there anything that you want to touch on that we haven't sort of thrown out to the audience as yet, that you want to leave some words of wisdom or anything that you think we haven't broached yet?
I think when it comes to teacher training, and it doesn't matter if people want to come and play with me or go elsewhere, because there is so much on the market, it's really important to shop around, and it's sometimes hard from the outskirts to compare apples with apples. So I encourage people to go to lots of classes and then start to maybe feel the sort of instructor that they resonate with, and have that conversation of, where did you train? How long did it take? It's all about quality for me. And it's not a quick fix. It's not a 5-minute jump in and expect to have all the answers. But also having the support, wherever you do go and train, to make sure there is mentorship and, somewhere you can go to ask those questions, even when you finished and when you graduated, because you will get out into the big bad Pilates world and feel like you still do not have all the answers.
Yep. No, I appreciate that as well. That's a raw and honest answer that I think will resonate with a lot of people viewing as well. A lot of people that are interested in doing it, that are potentially watching, is shop around, as you said, but find what works for you. And I think we touched on that earlier as well. Is it, if it's not working, don't do it, but find what's going to gel with you. Find your tribe almost, that aligns with you as an individual, not just with where you're going to be working. Make sure that what program you go to train in lands properly with you.
And I guess I often say to the students, or actually all the time, it depends what kind of instructor you want to be as well, right? Is the fitness world your space, and you do love, giving a burn and a hard workout and, making them cry and sweat a little bit? Or are you an instructor that really wants to understand how the body works and how those tiny little verbal or tactile cues can maybe make such a difference to the client's experience?
Yeah.
I know when I go to class, I want someone that is not just counting repetitions. I say all the time, I could get my 5-year-old in here. She knows how to get on a reformer. She knows how to count to 10. I don't want to pay her $60 an hour. What's going to make me want to pay you $60 an hour? What information can you give me? So as a client, even after 27 years of doing Pilates, makes me go, oh, that was good. I loved that.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. What's the best way that people can get in contact with you to find out more about what you have on offer in the way of education? And I suppose we even find out what classes are sort of in the local area.
Yeah, they can find me on the gram at Pilates Education AU. Our website, pilatesed.com.au. We have lots of different stuff that's always popping up, and modules that sort of get added fairly regularly in different locations. So they jump on there, they can join our mailing list and stay up to date with new locations, new dates, new courses.
Brilliant. Guys, there'll also be links in the Group X directory as well as the training dates. So any training dates that are coming up with Pilates Ed will be listed on the website as well. But, guys, if you have any questions and you can't get in contact with Tam, get in contact with me. I'll try and do my best
You're
to
an
get you in
expert
contact with
now.
Tam as
You
well.
can answer all the
I
questions.
wouldn't say expert, but hey, but no, if you've got questions and you want to ask and you don't feel comfortable reaching out to Tam directly, I don't know why you wouldn't, but you can always reach out to me and I can get you in contact with Tam as well. But Tam, thank you so much for coming in and spending some time with me. I greatly appreciate
I
it.
had a great time. Thanks, Tony. It was lovely to be here.